The victory hall sparkled with lights from a dozen different worlds. Commander Marcus Chen stood at the edge of the celebration, watching alien diplomats drink strange wines and laugh at jokes he did not understand. The war against the Zephyrian Empire was over. The humans had helped win it. Now Marcus wondered if that had been a mistake. "Commander Chen," called out Ambassador Thexlar, his blue skin gleaming under the crystal lights. The tall alien moved through the crowd with his usual grace. Behind him walked other coalition leaders, all smiling in ways that made Marcus feel uncomfortable. "We have discussed your reward," said Chancellor Vexmoth, her forearms gesturing dramatically. "You humans proved most useful during the conflict. Your species deserves recognition." Marcus nodded carefully. He had learned to be cautious around coalition politics. "I appreciate any consideration, but my crew and I were just doing our duty." The aliens exchanged glances that Marcus caught but could not read. Ambassador Thexlar stepped forward, his smile growing wider. "How humble. How very human. We have chosen something special for you, Commander. Something that shows how much we value your unique contribution." A side door opened. Two Corvan guards, looking like walking trees made of metal, escorted a figure into the hall. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. She had been the Empress of the Zephyrian Empire. Marcus had seen her image in battle reports and intelligence briefings. But those images had shown a figure of power, surrounded by floating crystals that amplified her psychic abilities. Now she walked in simple gray clothing, her hands bound by energy restraints. The crystal crown that had once made her the most feared ruler in known space was gone, leaving only the pale indentations where it had rested on her forehead. Empress Vaylin was tall, even by alien standards. Her skin held a slight purple tint, and her large eyes were the color of deep space. She walked with dignity despite her chains, but Marcus could see something broken in the way she held herself. "Behold your reward," announced Chancellor Vexmoth with obvious pleasure. "The fallen empress of our enemies. She is yours now, Commander Chen. A fitting prize for a primitive species that helped bring down a star empire." The alien leaders laughed. The sound echoed through the hall like breaking glass. Marcus realized they expected him to join their amusement. This was their joke. Give the simple human the broken toy that once ruled millions of worlds. "You may execute her for her war crimes," suggested Ambassador Thexlar, "or perhaps keep her as a trophy. We understand humans enjoy collecting things." Marcus looked at the woman who had once commanded fleets that could destroy planets. She stood perfectly still, her face showing nothing. But her eyes met his for just a moment, and he saw something that surprised him. Not fear, not anger, but a kind of tired dignity that reminded him of his own soldiers after too many battles. "I see," Marcus said slowly. The coalition leaders waited for his reaction. They wanted to see him gloat over his prize. They wanted to watch the primitive human enjoy having power over someone who had once been greater than any of them. Instead, Marcus stepped forward and did something that shocked everyone in the room. He reached out and carefully removed the energy restraints from Vaylin's hands. "Your Imperial Majesty," he said, offering her a respectful nod. "I am Commander Marcus Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Would you do me the honor of being my guest?" The hall fell silent. Chancellor Vexmoth's forearms stopped moving. Ambassador Thexlar's smile disappeared. Even the guards seemed uncertain. Vaylin looked at Marcus with surprise. She had expected death or imprisonment. She had prepared herself for humiliation. She had not expected courtesy from the species the coalition called barely civilized. "I am no longer an Imperial Majesty," she said quietly. Her voice carried a slight accent that made her words sound like music. "I am simply Vaylin now. Nothing more." "Everyone is something more than nothing," Marcus replied. "And anyone who led an empire for 20 years must have wisdom worth hearing." The coalition leaders watched this exchange with growing discomfort. This was not going according to their plan. The human was supposed to treat his prize like a trophy, not like a person deserving respect. "Commander Chen," Chancellor Vexmoth said carefully, "perhaps you do not understand. This female is responsible for the deaths of millions. She ordered attacks on coalition worlds. She is a war criminal." Marcus nodded. "I understand perfectly, Chancellor. War makes enemies of us all, but the war is over now. The question is what we do next." He turned back to Vaylin. "Your Majesty, I know this situation is not what any of us would choose. But if you are willing, I would value your company and perhaps your counsel. The universe is still a dangerous place and wisdom should not be wasted. For the first time since entering the hall, Valen's expression changed. Something flickered in her dark eyes that might have been hope or might have been confusion. "You would trust the counsel of your enemy?" she asked. "Former enemy?" Marcus corrected. "And yes, I would. Some of the best advice I ever received came from people who had every reason to dislike me." The coalition leaders realized their joke was failing. Ambassador Thexlar stepped forward, his voice sharp with annoyance. "Commander, surely you jest. This creature is beneath you now. She is defeated, broken, worthless. We give her to you as a symbol of human victory over a superior race." Marcus turned to face the assembled aliens. His voice remained calm, but something in his tone made the guards straighten. "With respect, Ambassador, I think you misunderstand both victory and superiority. Victory is not about making others small. It is about making the future better than the past. As for superiority," Marcus gestured around the room, "I see beings from many worlds all working together. That cooperation is our real strength, not putting others down." Chancellor Vexmoth's skin darkened with anger. "The human lectures us on cooperation? You species barely left your own world before we found you." "That is true," Marcus agreed. "We are new to the stars. But we learned long ago that strength comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down. Every great thing humanity has achieved came from working together and seeing potential in unexpected places." He looked back at Valen, who was watching this exchange with growing interest. "Your Majesty, the choice is yours. You can come with me as my guest, or I can arrange other accommodations for you, but I will not treat you as a prize or a trophy." Valen studied Marcus for a long moment. Around them, the coalition leaders watched with growing frustration. Their carefully planned humiliation was becoming something else entirely. "Very well, Commander Chen," Valen said finally. "I accept your invitation. Perhaps it will be interesting to learn how humans define hospitality." As they walked toward the exit together, Marcus heard Chancellor Vexmoth mutter to Ambassador Thexlar, "Foolish humans. They will learn that kindness is weakness." Marcus pretended not to hear, but he smiled slightly. The coalition leaders thought they understood humans. They thought they had given him a broken toy to mock his people's simple nature. Instead, they had given him something much more valuable than they realized. They had given him the chance to prove what humans really believed about second chances and the worth of every thinking being. Time would tell who was truly foolish. Marcus's quarters on Station Harmony were not designed for guests, especially not former alien empresses. He had cleared out his small meeting room and arranged for basic furniture that could accommodate Valen's height. The station's other officers watched with curiosity and concern as the former Zephyrian ruler moved through their corridors. "Sir, are you certain about this?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Kim, Marcus's aide. She stood in the doorway watching Valen examine the simple human furniture with obvious unfamiliarity. "No," Marcus admitted honestly, "but certainty is overrated. Sometimes you have to act on what feels right and figure out the details later." Valen turned from her examination of a basic human chair. "Your subordinate speaks wisdom, Commander. I am, as your coalition allies pointed out, a war criminal. Many of your people died because of my orders." Marcus nodded. "Yes, they did. And many of your people died because of mine. War is like that. The question is whether we learn from it or let it poison everything that comes after." Over the following days, Marcus began to understand just how thoroughly the coalition had misunderstood Zephyrian society. Valen explained it during their evening conversations, speaking in the careful way of someone who expected not to be believed. "My people are naturally psychic," she said, sitting awkwardly in the human chair that was too small for her frame. "But our abilities work in layers. The stronger mind dominates the weaker. It is not cruel, simply how we evolved. The crystal crown amplified my natural abilities, allowing me to coordinate the thoughts of millions." "And without it?" Marcus asked. "Without it, I am psychically invisible to other Zephyrians. They cannot sense me, cannot hear my thoughts, cannot acknowledge my existence in any meaningful way. To them I have become like a ghost." Marcus poured himself coffee from his personal supply. He had offered some to Valen, but Zephyrian biology could not process caffeine. "That sounds incredibly lonely." "It is." Valen's admission was quiet. "I ruled for 20 years, always connected to my people's thoughts and dreams. To suddenly be cut off, it is like losing a sense I did not know I possessed." But your intelligence, your knowledge, your experience, that is all still there. Yes, but what good is knowledge without the ability to share it? What value does experience have when no one will listen? Marcus leaned forward. I am listening. That became the foundation of everything that followed. Each evening, Marcus would bring Valen reports about coalition defense strategies, supply line management, and diplomatic challenges. At first, he claimed he was simply keeping her informed out of courtesy. But gradually, he began asking for her opinions. Her insights were remarkable. Where human and coalition strategists saw individual problems, Valen saw patterns spanning multiple star systems. She understood the flow of resources and information in ways that took Marcus weeks to follow. Your people approach each crisis as a separate event, she explained one evening, pointing to a tactical display showing 3 different conflicts. But look at the timing, the locations, the resources involved. These are not random attacks. Someone is testing your response patterns. Marcus studied the display with new eyes. You think they are connected? I am certain of it, watch. Valen manipulated the display with growing confidence, highlighting supply routes and communication delays. If you respond to this attack here with standard coalition tactics, you leave this system vulnerable for exactly 47 hours. Just long enough for a coordinated strike. How can you be so precise? Because I have used similar strategies myself. Your enemy thinks like a Zephyrian, but with less patience and more cruelty. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying this is being organized by your people? Not my people as they are now. The crown bearers who survived the war's end have scattered. Most lack the vision for this kind of coordination. But someone with Zephyrian training and a very different moral foundation. She trailed off, lost in thought. What is it? There were always those among my people who believed we were too gentle in our conquests. They argued we should have enslaved rather than integrated the worlds we claimed. I exiled many of them to the outer regions. If they have found new allies, new technology, Marcus understood immediately. They could be the threat behind these attacks. It is possible. But proving it will require investigation, and your coalition leaders will not listen to the theories of a defeated enemy. They might listen to mine. Valen looked at him with surprise. You would present my analysis as your own? I would present it as a joint analysis. Give credit where credit is due. For the first time since Marcus had known her, Valen smiled. It was a small expression, careful and unused, but genuine. Your species continues to surprise me, Commander. In Zephyrian society, taking credit for another's work is considered natural. The stronger mind claims the weaker mind's contributions. That sounds exhausting, Marcus said, always fighting to prove who is strongest. It is. But it was the only way I knew. She paused, studying Marcus with curiosity. How does human leadership work? Without psychic dominance, how do you coordinate group action? Marcus considered the question seriously. Trust, mostly, and the understanding that everyone has something valuable to contribute. A good leader's job is not to have all the answers, but to help other people find them. Even when those people are your former enemies. Especially then, former enemies often have the best insights into your weaknesses. Valen was quiet for a long moment. That is a dangerous philosophy, Commander. It requires tremendous faith in other beings' capacity for growth and change. Yes, it does. But the alternative is staying locked in old conflicts forever. And if that faith proves misplaced, Marcus shrugged. Then at least I tried something other than fear and suspicion. Even if I fail, maybe someone else will learn from my mistakes and do better. Valen studied him with an expression Marcus could not read. Your people must love you very much. Some do. Others think I am an idealistic fool who will get everyone killed. And which are correct? Probably both, Marcus admitted with a grin. But I would rather be a live idealist than a dead cynic. That night, as Marcus reviewed intelligence reports alone in his office, he realized something had changed. For the first time since the war ended, he was not working alone. Valen's insights had already begun changing how he saw patterns in the data. Her questions forced him to think more carefully about assumptions he had taken for granted. The coalition leaders had given him what they thought was a broken prize, a symbol of human victory over a superior race. Instead, they had given him something much more valuable, a partnership with one of the finest strategic minds he had ever encountered. Tomorrow, he would begin the delicate process of introducing Valen's insights to his command staff. He expected resistance, suspicion, and skepticism. But he also hoped for something more, the beginning of a new kind of cooperation that could benefit everyone. The universe was full of threats that no single species could face alone. If humans were going to survive and thrive among the stars, they would need all the wisdom they could find. Even wisdom that came from unexpected sources. The alarm sounded at Aero 347 station time. Marcus was already running toward the command center before the second tone finished echoing through the corridors. Behind him, he heard the distinctive sound of Valen's longer stride keeping pace. "Report!" Marcus called as he entered the command center. "3 systems have gone dark simultaneously," reported Commander Torres, his face grim. "Kepler Station, the Tau Ceti colony, and the mining operation at Wolf 359. No distress signals, no final transmissions, just silence." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. 3 major installations, all strategically important, all gone quiet at exactly the same time. This was not equipment failure or natural disaster. "Time to the nearest coalition response fleet?" he asked. 14 hours for the closest ships. But Admiral Kethran has already sent word that he will not deploy forces based on communication failures. He says we are being overly cautious. Valen moved to the tactical display without being invited. Several of Marcus's officers tensed, but he gestured for them to remain calm. "Show me the last communications from each location," Valen said quietly. Commander Torres looked to Marcus, who nodded. The display shifted to show communication logs from the past 24 hours. Valen studied the data with intense concentration. Her fingers moved across the display controls with growing urgency. "This is not a coincidence," she said finally. "Look at the pattern of the final transmissions." Each station reported minor technical difficulties in the same sequence: power fluctuations, communication static, sensor ghosts. "These are the signs of a coordinated stealth approach." "By who?" asked Lieutenant Kim. "The exile faction I mentioned to Commander Chen. They have found new allies and new technology. This is their opening move." Admiral Kethran's image appeared on the main screen before Marcus could respond. The Altarian's scaled face showed obvious irritation. "Commander Chen, I understand you are spreading panic over routine communication failures. This is exactly the kind of primitive overreaction we have come to expect from your species. Admiral, we have reason to believe these are coordinated attacks. Based on the theories of a war criminal?" Admiral Kethran's voice dripped with contempt. "Commander, your human sentimentality has clouded your judgment. You allow this defeated enemy to fill your mind with paranoid fantasies." Valen stepped forward. "Admiral, I know these patterns because I have used them myself. The exile faction has capabilities your intelligence services do not understand. The fallen Empress speaks." Admiral Kethran laughed. "How fitting. The broken toy tries to frighten us with ghost stories." Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. But Valen placed a calming hand on his shoulder. "Admiral," Marcus said carefully, "regardless of the source, the analysis is sound. We should at least send reconnaissance drones." "Enough!" Admiral Kethran's image flickered with his emotion. "I will not waste coalition resources on human paranoia and Zephyrian manipulation. If you choose to chase shadows, do so with your own forces. Do not involve your betters in this foolishness." The transmission ended abruptly. The command center fell silent except for the quiet hum of electronics. "Sir," said Commander Torres quietly. "What are your orders?" Marcus looked around the room at his officers. He saw doubt, concern, and loyalty warring in their expressions. Following his instincts and Valen's analysis meant acting against direct orders from Coalition Command. It could end his career and put everyone under his command at risk. "Prep the Valiant and her escort ships," he said finally. "Full battle configuration. We are going to investigate these communication failures personally." "Sir," the Admiral specifically ordered. "The Admiral ordered me not to involve my betters," Marcus interrupted with a slight smile. He said nothing about investigating with our own forces. As his officers hurried to implement his orders, Marcus turned to Valen. "Are you certain about this analysis?" "As certain as I can be without direct evidence. But Commander, there is something else you should know. If I am correct about the exile faction, they will not stop with 3 outposts. This is a pattern I recognize. They are testing your response capabilities before launching a larger offensive." "How much larger?" "They will target population centers next. Millions of lives are at stake." 2 hours later, the Valiant and 3 escort ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. The station that should have been visible on long-range sensors was gone. In its place floated a debris field that still glowed with residual energy. Life signs? Marcus asked quietly. None detected, sir, reported the sensor officer. But I am reading unusual energy signatures throughout the debris. This was not a conventional attack. Vaylin studied the tactical display with growing alarm. This confirms it. These energy patterns match theoretical research the Exile faction was conducting when I banished them. They have developed weapons that can phase matter out of normal space-time. English, please, requested Commander Torres. They can make entire installations disappear. Marcus translated grimly. Not destroyed, not captured, but removed from reality entirely. Sweet mother of... Torres caught himself. How do we fight something like that? By thinking differently than they expect, Vaylin said. The Exile faction knows coalition tactics. They know Zephyrian strategies, but they do not understand human adaptability. Over the next several hours, as they investigated the other attack sites, Vaylin worked with Marcus's tactical team to develop countermeasures. Her knowledge of Zephyrian technology, combined with human engineering creativity, produced solutions that neither species could have developed alone. The phase weapons require precise gravitational calibration, Vaylin explained to the assembled officers. But if we can create quantum interference fields using modified shield generators, we can disrupt their targeting systems, finished Lieutenant Chen, the ship's engineering officer. It will not stop the weapons entirely, but it will make accurate targeting nearly impossible. And while they are trying to recalibrate, added Commander Torres, we hit them with everything we have. Marcus watched his officers work with their former enemy to develop new defensive strategies. There was still tension, still uncertainty, but also a growing respect for Vaylin's expertise. Sir, reported Communications Officer Hayes, I am receiving a priority transmission from Coalition Command. Admiral Kethran's image reappeared on the main screen. This time his expression was very different. Commander Chen, I owe you an apology. 17 more installations have gone silent in the past 6 hours. Whatever you discovered at Kepler Station, we need to know immediately. Marcus looked at Vaylin, who nodded slightly. Admiral, we have confirmed the existence of a new threat using advanced phase weapons, but we have also developed potential countermeasures. However, implementing them will require unprecedented cooperation between human engineering and Zephyrian strategic knowledge. Admiral Kethran's scales shifted color slightly. You mean cooperation with the war criminal? I mean cooperation with one of the finest strategic minds in known space, Marcus corrected firmly. Whether we like it or not, she may be our best hope of stopping this threat. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Marcus could see him struggling with political considerations, pride, and practical necessity. Very well, Admiral Kethran said finally. Transmit your countermeasure data to all coalition forces. And Commander, your unconventional approach may have saved millions of lives. Well done. As the transmission ended, Marcus felt a moment of satisfaction, but Vaylin's expression remained troubled. This is only the beginning, she warned. The Exile faction will adapt quickly once they realize their surprise advantage is gone. The real test is still ahead of us, Marcus nodded. The cruel joke had become something else entirely. The coalition leaders had given him a defeated enemy to mock human naivety. Instead, they had given him exactly what humanity needed. A partner who could help them face threats no single species could handle alone. The question now was whether the rest of the galaxy would be wise enough to follow their example. 6 months after the first phase weapon attacks, Marcus found himself in a position he had never expected, teaching advanced strategic theory to coalition officers while learning from someone the galaxy had written off as finished. The Joint Command Center on Station Unity buzzed with activity. Holographic displays showed star maps, fleet positions, and tactical analyses. Officers from a dozen different species worked side by side, but the real partnership that made it all possible sat at the center planning table. The Exile faction has adapted faster than I anticipated, Vaylin admitted, studying the latest intelligence reports. They have learned to work around our quantum interference fields, but they have also revealed more about their capabilities, Marcus pointed out. Each adaptation teaches us something new about their technology. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, now Marcus's chief strategic analyst, looked up from her calculations. The pattern suggests they have a limited number of the advanced phase weapons, maybe a dozen at most, which means, added Commander Torres, they have to choose their targets very carefully. Vaylin nodded. Exactly. And that gives us an advantage. We can predict their likely targets based on strategic value and defensive capabilities. Admiral Kethran entered the command center, followed by several other coalition leaders. Over the past months, the Admiral's attitude toward both Marcus and Valen had changed dramatically. The results spoke for themselves. 17 successful defenses against phase weapon attacks, with minimal casualties. Status report, the Admiral requested. We have identified 3 high-probability targets for the next wave of attacks, Marcus replied, activating the main display. The shipyards at Proxima Station, the communications hub at Vega Prime, and the research facility at Kepler 442. Our recommendation, Valen continued, is to set a trap. Allow them to believe one target is vulnerable while preparing a coordinated response. Admiral Kethran studied the display thoughtfully. Which target do you recommend as bait? Proxima Station, Marcus and Valen said simultaneously, then looked at each other with slight smiles. After months of working together, they often reach the same conclusions through different reasoning. The shipyards are the most tempting target, Valen explained. High strategic value, and the Exile faction knows our fleet strength depends on continued ship production. Plus, added Marcus, we can evacuate most civilian personnel without making it obvious. The station's layout allows us to hide defensive forces in ways that will not show up on long-range scans. Ambassador Thexlar, who had been watching the briefing with obvious discomfort, finally spoke up. I must voice concerns about this plan. We are relying heavily on the analysis of a former enemy. How do we know this is not an elaborate deception? The command center fell silent. It was a question that had been whispered in corridors, but never asked directly in front of Valen. Valen turned to face the ambassador directly. You are right to question my motives, Ambassador. I was your enemy for 20 years. I ordered attacks that killed your people. You would be foolish to trust me without reason. Then why should we trust you? Ambassador Thexlar demanded. Because, Valen said quietly, I have found something more valuable than revenge or restoration of my old power. Commander Chen has shown me what leadership truly means. Not domination over others, but service to something greater than yourself. She gestured around the command center, where humans, Altarians, Corvin, and others work together on the tactical displays. Look at what we have built here. Species that barely knew each other 6 months ago, working together as equals, sharing knowledge, supporting each other's strengths, compensating for each other's weaknesses. This is not how the old Zephyrian Empire operated. This is something new. Marcus felt pride warm his chest, but Valen was not finished. The Exile faction represents everything I now reject. They believe in domination, in the superiority of the strong over the weak. If they succeed, they will enslave or destroy everything we have built here. I cannot allow that. Even if it means permanently losing any chance to reclaim your old position, asked Admiral Kethran. Valen was quiet for a moment. Admiral, I have been offered my old title back 3 times in the past month. Surviving Zephyrian nobles have contacted me, offering to restore my crown if I abandon this cooperation and help them rebuild the empire. Marcus felt shock run through him. She had never mentioned these offers. Each time I refused, Valen continued, not because I do not miss the connection to my people, but because I have learned that true leadership is not about the power to command. It is about the wisdom to serve. Ambassador Thexlar studied her for a long moment. And you believe this human has taught you this wisdom? I believe this human has reminded me of wisdom I had forgotten. The strongest leader is not the one who can force others to obey, but the one who can inspire others to choose cooperation. Marcus cleared his throat, feeling slightly embarrassed by the praise. If we could get back to the tactical planning. Actually, said Admiral Kethran, I think this discussion is very relevant to our tactical planning. The Exile faction expects us to fight like the old coalition, with rigid hierarchies and species-based divisions. Our greatest advantage is that we have become something they cannot predict. Over the next several hours, they refined the trap for Proxima Station. But Marcus noticed something that surprised him. Valen was not just contributing her knowledge of Zephyrian tactics. She was learning and adapting to human and coalition strategies with remarkable speed. You are thinking differently than you did 6 months ago, he observed during a brief break. Valen considered this. Yes, in Zephyrian strategy, the goal is always to impose your will on the enemy through superior force or cunning. But human tactics seem to focus on adaptation and cooperation. You turn the enemy's strengths into weaknesses by refusing to fight the battle they expect. And what have you learned from that? That flexibility is more powerful than rigid superiority. That the willingness to change and grow is itself a form of strength. Marcus smiled. And what have you taught me? Patience, I hope, and the value of thinking in longer terms than immediate tactical advantage. Lieutenant Commander Kim approached with a new intelligence report. Sirs, we have confirmation. Exile faction ships have been detected moving toward Proxima Station. Estimated arrival in 18 hours. Marcus and Vaylin exchanged a look of grim satisfaction. Then it is time to see if our partnership can pass the ultimate test, Vaylin said. As the command center erupted into controlled activity, Marcus reflected on how much had changed. The coalition leaders had given him a broken enemy as a cruel joke. Instead, they had given him exactly what he needed. A partner who could help him become a better leader while finding her own path to redemption. Tomorrow would prove whether their new approach to cooperation could succeed against an enemy that represented everything they had learned to reject, the exile. Faction was about to discover that the galaxy had changed while they were hiding in the outer darkness. And change, Marcus had learned, was humanity's greatest weapon. The battle for Proxima Station began exactly as Vaylin had predicted. The exile faction's ships emerged from hyperspace like ghosts, their hulls flickering with the strange energy patterns that allowed them to phase in and out of normal spacetime. To long-range sensors, they appeared to be facing only a skeleton defense force. Marcus watched from the bridge of the Valiant, hidden in the station's superstructure along with 24 other coalition ships. Around him, officers from 6 different species monitored their instruments with tense concentration. Phase weapon charging detected, reported the Corvin sensor operator, his tree-like form perfectly still. Multiple targets acquired. Let them get closer, Vaylin said calmly from her position at the tactical display. The trap only works if they commit fully to the attack. Admiral Kethron's voice crackled over the communication system from his flagship hidden on the far side of the station. All units maintain concealment. Wait for the signal. Marcus felt sweat on his palms despite the controlled environment of the bridge. Everything they had built over the past months, all the cooperation and trust between former enemies, would be tested in the next few minutes. The lead exile ship moved into optimal firing position. Its phase cannon began to glow with deadly energy. Now, Vaylin said quietly, all units execute, Marcus commanded. The space around Proxima Station erupted with activity. Coalition ships emerged from hiding places throughout the station's structure. Quantum interference fields activated simultaneously, creating a web of disruption that made the phase weapons targeting systems scream in electronic confusion. But the exile faction had learned from their previous encounters. As soon as the interference began, their ships shifted formation into a pattern Marcus had never seen before. They are adapting faster than expected, Vaylin observed with professional admiration. Look at that formation. They are using their own ships as quantum anchors to stabilize the phase weapon targeting. Can we counter it? Asked Commander Torres. Not with our current tactics, Vaylin admitted. But... She paused, studying the enemy formation with intense concentration. But what? They are using their ships as anchors, which means they cannot move freely. And the formation requires precise positioning. Vaylin's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. Commander Chen, how quickly can your human pilots adjust to new flight patterns? Faster than anyone expects, Marcus replied with confidence. What do you have in mind? Something that breaks all conventional rules of space combat. Your pilots will hate it, Marcus grinned. Perfect. Those are usually our best plans. What followed was the most unconventional space battle in recorded galactic history. Instead of maintaining formation and exchanging fire at optimal ranges, the coalition ships began flying in seemingly random patterns that made no tactical sense to anyone trained in standard military doctrine. Except they were not random. Vaylin had calculated flight paths that would destabilize the exile faction's quantum anchor formation by introducing chaotic gravitational variables. It required split-second timing and suicidal trust between pilots who had never worked together before. Valiant, break left now, Vaylin called into the communication system. Steadfast, dive 90 degrees on my mark. Human pilots followed her directions without question. Altarian commanders trusted human judgment. Corvin ships moved in ways their designers had never intended. The Exile faction's precise formation began to collapse as their quantum anchors could no longer maintain stable positions. Their phase weapons started firing wildly, sometimes hitting empty space, sometimes striking their own ships by mistake. "Impossible," breathed the Corvin sensor operator. "They are firing on their own forces." "Not intentionally," Valen explained. "Their targeting systems are now completely confused. They cannot distinguish between friend and enemy." Admiral Kethran's voice came over the communication system, filled with amazement. "All units press the attack. Their weapons are useless. What should have been a decisive victory for the Exile faction became a rout. Their advanced technology, designed to overwhelm conventional defenses, was useless against tactics that made no conventional sense." As the last Exile ship fled into hyperspace, the Coalition fleet regrouped around Proxima Station. The command center erupted in cheers from officers who had never expected to survive, let alone win so decisively. But Marcus noticed that Valen looked troubled rather than triumphant. "What is it?" he asked. "This was too easy," she said quietly. "The Exile faction I knew would not have committed so fully to a single attack. This feels like what? Like a test. Or a distraction." Before Marcus could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency signals flooded the communication channels from across Coalition space. "Reports coming in from multiple sectors," Lieutenant Commander Kim announced, her face pale. "The Exile faction has launched simultaneous attacks on 17 different targets, including Earth." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "Earth? How is that possible?" Valen was already working at the tactical display, pulling up star charts and fleet positions. "Because we were watching the wrong target. They let us win here to draw our forces away from the real objectives." "Estimated time for our fastest ships to reach Earth?" Marcus asked. 14 hours, replied Commander Torres. "But sir, the Exile faction ships are already there." Marcus stared at the displays showing attacks across Coalition space. 17 different battles, most of them already over. The Exile faction had used their victory at Proxima Station as a distraction, while they struck at the heart of Coalition power. "Sir," said Admiral Kethran's voice over the communication system. "What are your orders?" Marcus looked around the command center at officers from multiple species, all waiting for his decision. Then he looked at Valen, who was studying the tactical displays with the same calm intensity she brought to every crisis. "We do what humans do best," Marcus said finally. "We adapt, we learn, and we help each other. Admiral, divide the fleet. Send our fastest ships to assist the closest targets, but leave the core battle group here." "Sir?" Admiral Kethran sounded confused. "Surely our priority should be Earth." "Our priority should be ending this war," Marcus corrected. "Valen, you know the Exile faction better than anyone. If they wanted to destroy these targets, they would have used the phase weapons. What do they really want?" Valen was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "They want to force the Coalition into surrender negotiations. They have taken hostages, not destroyed targets. They will offer to exchange the captured populations for political concessions. And if we refuse, then they will demonstrate their power by destroying one target completely. Probably Earth, to prove that even humanity's homeworld is not safe." Marcus nodded grimly. "How long do we have?" "Coalition protocols require 72 hours to organize a formal surrender negotiation. They will wait that long to maintain the appearance of legitimacy. Then we have 72 hours to end this war permanently." Marcus turned to address the entire command center. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings of all species, we are going to do something unprecedented. We are going to find the Exile faction's main base and destroy their ability to make war." Admiral Kethran's voice carried doubt. "Commander, we do not even know where their base is located." "Yes, we do," Valen said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "I have been analyzing their attack patterns, their supply requirements, their tactical choices. There is only one location that makes sense." She manipulated the star chart, highlighting a region at the edge of known space, the Void Nebula. "It provides natural concealment, rich mineral resources, and strategic position. It is where I would have placed a hidden base if I were in their position." "That is 3 days' travel time," observed Commander Torres. "Even if we are right, we cannot get there and back before the deadline." Marcus smiled. "We do not need to get back. We just need to get there." As the Coalition fleet prepared for what might be their final battle, Marcus found himself alone with Vei-Lin in the observation lounge. Outside the windows, stars wheeled slowly as the station rotated. "You know this might be a one-way trip," he said. "Yes," she replied simply. "Does that change your decision?" "No. Does it change yours?" Vei-Lin was quiet for a long moment. "A year ago I would have seen this as a chance to die with honor and rejoin my people in whatever comes after death. Today I see it as a chance to protect something worth preserving. The coalition? No. The idea that different species can choose to work together as equals, that former enemies can become partners. That strength comes from lifting others up rather than pushing them down." She paused. "You have shown me what my people could become if they chose cooperation over domination." Marcus nodded. "And you have shown me that redemption is possible for anyone willing to choose growth over pride." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Tomorrow they would face an enemy that represented everything they had learned to reject. But tonight, they could take satisfaction in what they had built together. The coalition leaders had given Marcus a fallen queen as a cruel joke, expecting him to treat her as a trophy of human victory over a superior race.